Hey, we're now going to go over some additional visuals. We'll go over point lights, cameras, post-process effects, and bone scaling. We'll begin with point lights and start by putting one in each corner of our level. Search for point lights and drag one in. We're going to set our intensity to 50, and then we'll go ahead and drag into our first corner, and then hold Alt and drag on one of the arrows to duplicate in that direction. Let go of Alt and then hold it again and drag on the Y, and then do the same thing for our last corner. Now we can code our complex visualizer to update those lights. To do that, we'll open up our visualizer and we'll go to our single envelope value event. The first thing we're going to do is click and drag and highlight all of our previous code and drag it over. Then we're going to hit C on the keyboard, and that'll highlight all of our code in this area within a comment box. Type in spheres. Now we can move that all around together without having to highlight it again. I'm going to change my sphere color alpha down to 0.25. There. Now what we'll want to do is drag out of our initial execution line and type sequence. Select sequence here. Now what we can do is add a series of execution lines that will operate in sequence. You can right click on any of these and hit remove execution pin if you've had too many added. We'll drag out of that. Make sure that you drag out of then 1, not then 0, and type get all actors of class. In select class, we can type point light. Now out of our out actors node output, I always get that wrong, we can type for each and click our for each loop, connect the execution lines, drag out of our array element and type set intensity. This will get the light component and call it set intensity function. Drag your execution line over, drag out of this execution line and type branch. We'll want to come over here and drag out of our light component again and type set light color. Create a reroute node, align this, and then drag over our true execution line. So now what we can do is set the light intensity based on our single envelope, and if it's over a certain threshold, we'll change the light color using our get color from index function that we created earlier. We can go ahead and drag that new color in, and then we can drag out of the index and type random integer. In the random integer, we'll type 11. And then we'll bring in our envelope. First, we're going to type multiply, float by float, and then we're going to drag out of that and type max, float, type 50 into here, and then drag that up into our new intensity. Drag it out of here, our max, hit the greater than sign, and then say float greater than float. Drag our red node here, our boolean, up into our branch, and then we can create our variables. So first we're going to right click on the multiplier. Make sure that you right click on the empty variable here and promote to variable. Name this point light multiplier. Make sure you compile and change the point multiplier's default value to this needs to be higher, so we'll set it to 600. And then we can right click on our greater than empty parameter value and promote that to variable as well. We'll name this one light change threshold. Actually, color change threshold. Compile and save, and then we can change that to, let's say, 100. Our max is 50. Double check everything, make sure it's all connected right. Now we should be good to test. Compile and save. Perfect. Personally, I think I'm going to select each of these by holding Shift and clicking them. And then I'm going to drag them up to the top. Right about there. I think I'll like this look better. I do. So next we're going to play with our character's camera here, and we're going to give it a wobble. First we have to create a camera shake. To do that, right click on your background within your audiovisuals assets folder. Click Blueprint class, and down here open up all classes. then search for camera shake. Select and call it CS. Oops, an autosave happened while I was renaming. Name it CS underscore wobble. Open that up. And what we're going to set is our location oscillation over here in the details. Open that up. Open up X. And then type 5 into amplitude. Type 25 into frequency. For initial offset, select zoom. And then keep it on waveform sine wave. Compile and save. Now if we open up our complex visualizer, we can program that. So like before, we can go up to our sequence, add a new sequence. Just going to organize this a little bit here. Double click to add a reroute node and control click to drag it. I'm going to drag out of our new sequence and then type branch. This one's nice and simple. So we're only going to do this if our single envelope is greater than float, and type in 0.33. Drag that into our branch, and then we can go ahead and make our camera wobble. Right click on the background and type get player controller. Drag out from that and type get camera, and type get camera manager. And then from that, we can type get camera location. Now, if we drag out from the true execution from our branch and type play world camera shake, so now if we drag the get camera location vector into this vector parameter here, we can keep inner radius at 0 and type outer radius to 5000. Make sure you also select your shake class here to CS Wobble. Back in our camera wobble, we have to make sure to set our oscillation duration to 0.5. We can compile and save, and then we can test. Perfect. Now we can move on to post-process effects. So the first thing we're going to want to do is add a post-process effects volume. Type and search for post-process volume and click and drag it out into your level. Now the second thing we're going to want to do is in our details search, type unbound. And make sure you check this infinite extent unbound setting. That'll make everything in the level be affected by our post-process volume instead of everything just within its volume. And then we can go ahead and just play. What I mean by that is that you're going to want to go through all of these settings and figure out which ones you like to play with most. Find the ones that make you happiest with the way that you want your scene to look, and then we can go ahead and program them later. I'll give you a few examples here. The bloom intensity, exposure, lens flares, they're always fun to use. Depth of field, and our color gradings. Right off, you can play with a temperature, and then you can play with your toning. You have global, shadows, midtones, highlights, and a miscellaneous grouping. Playing with the global will affect all of these: shadows, midtones, and highlights. And playing with these will make it so that it only affects, well, your shadows, midtones, and highlights. Let me show you really quick. So now we're going to go ahead and program this post-process volume. Go into our visualizers and open your complex visualizer. So the first thing we're going to do is add another execution pin to our sequence, and then drag down and get all actors of class again. Then we're going to select our class and type post process volume. We'll drag out of here and type get and select a copy. Drag out of our copy and type set settings. Make sure that we connect our execution line here and keep your index here in our get at 0. You have to make sure that you only have one post-process volume within your level. We'll drag out of the input of our settings node and type make post process settings. Compile and save. Now at first it'll look like there are no settings that you can set here. All you have to do is click on that and then search for the settings or find them in here that you're looking for. I'll start with blue. I'll check the intensity, and now the blue intensity is available here. I'll also look for global saturation. Contrast. I'll look for blue. Oops. I already have blue intensity. I'll look for exposure. Not the curve. And I'll look for lens flare. I'll check intensity and bokeh size. Now we have to add in some math for every one of these settings. So we'll drag down our envelope value once more, create a reroute node. One of the first values we'll want is it +1, and then we'll drag out a saturation and click make vector 4. Type 1 into W and drag this into X. Double click for a reroute node, drag it into Y as well, and Z. And then we'll copy that same value into contrast. There's going to be a lot more here, so we'll organize it later. We'll bring a reroute node over here. We'll type multiply float by float, times it by 5, and drag that straight into the bokeh size. We're going to drag a reroute node for our +1 down here and drag that both into our intensity here and here. We can drag it forward for organization and create another reroute node right here. Now finally, we want our pure value, which comes in from this original line, to come in, reroute node for symmetry, and go straight into our exposure. Organize this. much better. Compile and save, and we'll test it out. Wow. All kinds going on. Maybe a little overboard, but the effect is shown. So now we're going to scale our bones. The first thing we're going to do here is click on third person blueprint in our blueprints folder, and then third person character. Here we're going to add two variables. We're going to name it scale head, change that to a float, and we're going to name the second one scale hands. Compile and save, and we'll set both of those to a default of 2, just to test first. Now what we're going to want to do is click on our mesh, and then click on this right next to our anim class, and it should take you to where it's located in our browser. Double click on third person anim blueprint, anim BP here, and then we're going to add both of those same variables named head scale as a float and hands scale. Defaulting them both to 2 as well. Now if we click on our event graph, what we can do is move this up in line, from our try get pawn, we can add another one here. We'll cast to third person character, drag your execution line in, and we'll get head scale, and we'll also get our hand scale. Then we can drag in our local head scale, set that, and we can also drag in our local hand scale and set that as well. Compile and save. Now if we open up our anim graph, we can right click and type transform bone, Control C and Control V, so that we have 2. You want to control click and drag this result and plug it into the component pose. That'll automatically convert to local component for you. And then you want to chain connect these two and reconnect here, converting it back to local. Now if we click on our first one here, we can click and type head to select our bone to modify. And on this one, we can click and type left. Oops, sorry. We can type hand left. My bad, we need another one. I forgot there was two hands. And we'll select hand right for this one. We can drag in our head scale, drag that into the scale parameter. We can do the same thing for the hands, except here you can drag out of this already converted value and put it in both hand left and hand right.